How's it going, acolytes? Welcome back to the Arcane Archive. That's right. We've got another amazing episode of Cautionary Chronicles for you today, and we have quite the slew of stories for you. Some rather funny, some near and dear to our hearts, but most of all, I think we got a decent amount that will elicit quite the stimulating round of conversation. Me and Sam are already kind of talking and debating a little bit about a couple of these already off the top when we were looking at them, and we're hoping that they might also inspire a bit of you to have some open discourse. In fact, for this particular episode, I'm very much interested in everybody's thoughts and feelings on this. Please do be sure to leave a comment down below about everything we're talking about here and some kind of your thoughts on how these situations were handled and who you think could have done things better or differently. And while you're at it, be sure to leave a like on the video if you got that far. We appreciate that. Subscribe and share the channel. Always super helpful and appreciated. Thank you guys all so much. And with that, let's just get right into here. All right, let's get this started. This first story of the day is something that immediately when me and Sammy saw it, had a particularly profound hit for us, or well, me specifically. And this story is titled "The Story of the Unluckiest Player I Have Ever Seen."
I'm pretty sure someone stole this from your memoirs.
Quite frankly, I would not be surprised if they did, because stuff like this has happened numerous times. By OP Throw Away. So, one of my best friends is the unluckiest player I know. I don't know what he did that angered RNGesus so hard, but his rolls can't be explained by misfortune alone. Here are some of the personal highlights. When we rolled our stats, we roll 46 and we discard the lowest, very common method. And with this method, he rolled the following: 3, 3, 5, 6, 6, and 7. And the GM told him to re-roll. But the only improvement at that point was that he now had a 9 to work with at best. That, again, oh, goodness gracious. I've never rolled stats that bad before, but good golly Lord, I feel that so hard. He had advantage on an attack roll and rolled 2 nat 1s in a row. Not 2 fails, 2 nat 1s.
Yeah, I've done that before.
I've done that a couple of times as well. Every time he gets healed by a spell, potion, or ability, he rolls minimal damage, or minimal healing, excuse me. Yeah, no, so many times. He once used a 3rd level spell slot to smite a bandit and landed a crit. For damage, he rolled only 1s. Oh, God, that hurts.
That's why you take the one where you get to reroll 1s and 2s.
But you have to take the new roll, though. It doesn't matter. If you reroll 1s and 2s, you just get 1s and 2s again. It doesn't matter, Sam.
You never know.
It doesn't matter.
You never know. That's the
thing. We do. That's the thing. When they just want you to fail, you'll just fail. These are just some of the highlights. But these situations are common for him, and they aren't limited to TTRPGs. Magic the Gathering, Warhammer Tabletop, Monopoly. It's all the same. The problem is that it really breaks the fun he has with these games. And it's hard to motivate him to play dice games or card games when he constantly feels like all the odds are just always stacked against him. End post. Bit of a shorter one here for certain, but god damn, the feels, bro. The empathy. I feel this man so hard. Oh, I know that, dude. Especially the landing a crit and then rolling all ones for the damn. This is exactly why you just use Chris Perkins' alternate rule of heroic crits. Just do that. Just literally do it where you land a crit. You just get the max dice roll from the crit and then you roll again for extra damage. Just do that. I do not understand why people constantly do the thing where it's like, oh yeah, you just add the dice. That still runs the risk of this, where a crit can literally be maybe even less than a normal hit could be, just because you rolled shit. So effectively, you didn't get anything from the crit. It's non-existent. And it's like, There is no worse feeling in the world when you literally crit like this gentleman did with a paladin, and you use a high level smite slot, and you just roll all ones or twos, and it's just like that's literally like that is the euphoric moment for a paladin to literally crit on their attack and then divine smite. Like that's there's no better feeling for a paladin than when they're able to get that off, and for you to then just roll all ones across the board. It's just like
it's not a fun one. I mean, there's ways to fight against it, but God, it is just unlucky.
it's just sad. It's just, that has happened to me before too, where I have scored crits and just rolled like again all ones, and it's just like
my first character was like, that was something that I built. I took Great Weapon Fighting specifically to avoid that, and it still happened once where I got ones and twos, I re-rolled and got ones and twos, and it sucked. But that's the difference. Like, you try to plan, I guess, as much as
I mean, you try to, but again, there's only so much you can do. Like it's just like like if the dice gods wish to curse you, you're just cursed. There's nothing like it doesn't matter, because again, like it's literally like so many times. That's why I personally take the lucky feat whenever I can. Like whenever it's allowed in games, I am unabashedly, unashamedly, almost always gonna take that lucky feat, because you know why, audience? It doesn't even matter. Okay, I roll the thing, I roll again. Most of the time, it'll still be the same. In fact, literally last week when I had a session, or 2 weeks ago, rather, I should say, when I had a session on Sunday, my character, I was just rolling 12s all night, and not like rolling a 12, but my max final roll was like 12s. The entire time we played, literally, almost every roll I made for anything, attacks, checks, saves, it just kept being 12. It kept averaging out to, or not averaging, but adding up to 12 the entire session. It was crazy. It made no sense, and it was so frustrating. It's just like, I have like a +8 to this roll. Can I just roll a 10? Just a 10 would be fine, because then I get an 18. That's fine. Can I just roll an average to the middle of the road, please? And like literally, to get 12 with a +8, I have to roll a 4. I consistently was rolling 4, or obviously below double digits to get up to a 12 at the most in double digits. It's just like, holy shit. And this, good golly gosh God. Top comment down here below says, when a player gets a roll so bad as he did, then as a GM, you would absolutely allow them to switch to point buy or standard array, especially when it's a longer campaign. My GM actually did a slightly varied version of standard array that enables some higher starting stats so that it feels more heroic without feeling overpowered. Basically, the optimal result you'd love to have when rolling for your stats, since playing with just highest stats is not fun either, at least not for me. Maybe it is for people who want to win the game, but those people are weird in their opinion. With a few variations so you can decide if you want to focus or not. Comment below replies, the one time I did a group that used rolls, everyone had agreed that the highest 2 rolls were bumped to 15 and 17 if they weren't there already. This was back in 2E that we like to play, even though 3.5 had long been a thing. But that 17 and 15 meant most people could play whatever they wanted. And that's, I am a huge arbiter for that kind of thinking, in terms of just like for stats. It's like, you don't,
there's a minimum you had to hit. I think it was 72 was the bare minimum. That's what you could get with standard array.
That's like standard array or whatever.
Or point buy was you could get a max of 72. So if you rolled 4 times for your stats, if you're still rolling under 72, you roll again. Like that was or we bump up. But like for the most part, it was like we would roll individually. We've changed it now to like we roll as a group.
Yeah.
We roll 2 stat lines, and the group votes between the 2, and they both have to be over 72. Just so that, like, you
have a chance. You got a real chance.
Yeah, there might be a weakness, but that means everyone has a weakness in something different. And
that's okay.
They're all building different characters, so everybody has something.
That's why
But
I'm always okay with taking a dump stat. I'm always okay with taking like an 8 or a 9 or whatever, to add whatever. Like that's
of
fine.
course, I'd prefer a 10, but yeah, I'll take it. I'll take an 8. You know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Again, if I did roll an 8, like as long as it's not like all 8s across the board, or even like half of my array is like 8 or below, it's like I will take an 8. If I got like 1, maybe even 2, like below average rolls, right?
Yeah.
I'll probably keep those. I'll be like, all right, cool, that's fine. I don't need to be good in every single thing either. There's 6 total stats and attributes, so I can be kind of crap in 2 of them. That's not terrible. It's not the worst thing. It can be funny at times as well, as long as the other stats are at least, decent, or at least like relatively high. Like again, nice balance. Because otherwise, yeah, you're just sitting there. You're like, what am I supposed to do with a stat array
like
of 3, 3, 5, 6, 6, 7? Oh, I'm sorry. 3, 5, 6, 6, 7, 9. Like,
yeah, I would say just play absurd, but you can't even do that because you need
no,
the
you
bare
need
minimum
stat,
to.
technically,
Yeah,
you need stat requirements.
you need
You
stat
don't
requirements.
have to. If your GM doesn't want to use that rule, yeah, you could just play absurd, but then it wouldn't matter though, because you'd suck at everything. You just have more things that you suck at that point.
Yeah,
Like literally, a three is literally minus
minus
4
4
to the
Jesus.
rolls. Like it's
you wouldn't like you'd have to roll. You'd have to be like the opposite of rolling for you. It would have to be someone who only rolls like 17 and above on the dice.
like literally, like it's like what are you supposed to do with that? Like
Yeah.
how and the most crazy aspect about this too is there are actually GMs who will be like, you got to take what you got, buddy. Sorry to tell you. It's like,
Yeah. Well, it's like okay. Well,
my
I'm not,
man,
my
my
character
brother,
dies,
my homie. How would that be fun? Isn't the point to have fun? How do you expect a person to have fun with stats like this?
Yeah, okay. We'll start your opening scene, DM. All right, you're at a bar. All right, my character trips over someone and knocks his head on a bar at the corner of the bar, ending his life.
Yep.
Can I roll a new character?
Can I roll a new
please?
character now? Yeah, because literally, if you put a 3 in your con,
Roll a
you're gonna have
dice.
you'll have less hit
Let's
points.
say I'll have less. I'll have like 9 I'll have like 5 HP, and if we go at level 1, I'll have like 2, and I'll play a wizard, and I'll make sure that all of my physical stats are as low as possible, so that the odds of me surviving any encounter with anything will just kill me immediately, so I can roll a new character.
But at that point, again, at that
I'll just
point,
play.
like,
I'll just leave and play a different game.
that's what I'm saying. Like at that point, it's just like you just let me roll a new character.
We've had this talk. I don't have the patience for these people.
Yeah,
so.
neither would I. No, if a GM literally said this to me, if I rolled this kind of stat line and he was like, "Well, you get what you get," I'm like, "Cool, then you don't get me part of this group." Deuces, and I'd be fucking out. Like there'd be no way I would stand or stay for that, because that's insane to me. That there are people that are literally just like, that's part of the game. We made a collective decision to be like, you gotta accept what you roll, and it's like,
okay, I rolled bad. Can I just get the same stat roll as somebody else?
yeah. Like,
can I get their roll?
Can I just or again? Can I just do standard array? Like how I always do it is I'm like, look, you can roll for stats. If you don't like what you rolled, then you can choose standard array or point buy. Like that's how I do it. Where it's just like you get to choose between. You can roll for it because rolling is always fun, because you could get something really great. Again, it gives you the opportunity to get something higher. But at the very least, like Sam said, you shouldn't ever be below, in my opinion, to be fair, you should never be below the predetermined 72-point establishment. You should always at least get access to that. So
there's a reason standard array exists, and it's the fact that, like, legitimately, standard array is supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be the most optimal, like, way of being able to play while still having, balanced and challenging but fun, stuff. But I like to be more powerful. Like I do. Like I'm a huge fan of having that extra power, being like, yo, I got high rolls. I feel good about that. It feels good to be powerful and good at what you do in the game. And so with that, it's like, yeah, people who are for some reason just so indirect, like, rejection of that, in lieu of just being like, well, we have to maintain the legitimacy and it's like, Yeah, shut the fuck up, dude. You're not having
You're the
fun.
you're the one that's like pushing on that legitimacy.
You're literally, there's no such thing as legitimacy. You should be legitimately having a good time. That's the only legitimacy you should worry about. But anyway, with that, I think we've said as much as we can about that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Sammy, if you'd like to take it away, please.
Sure. Next up, we have rude players' criticism crosses the line and nearly crumbles the campaign by Black_Lister. This is a longer one. So the story takes place a while ago. This was a campaign that I joined after several failed attempts to get into a group that could stay together. Prior to this, my experience with D&D was limited to 3 or 4 campaigns that never got past session 4. Resultingly, I'd made a new character for each, and none of them had been used yet. So for this campaign, since there wasn't yet a wizard in the party, I joined as a wizard. Now, the campaign started pretty well, and although one player ended up leaving the campaign, which was played off as our ranger who had recently been infected with a horrible virus, eating him in a fugue state one night. Awesome. He was quickly replaced by 2 new players, and our party remained fairly consistent after that. Besides myself, our party consisted of barbarian, ranger, cleric, and warlock. The campaign took place in the DM's homebrew world, with many different nations existing on the same continent. Early on, we found a book that detailed a rough outline of what the BBEG might do, including what enemies we might have to fight, with clues to finding the linchpin agents that would be leading those forces. The BBEG had orchestrated that all of these forces would be rising simultaneously, so any direction our party went to deal with a problem, another would inevitably rise to prominence elsewhere in the world, even if we managed to beat our target. It was a really cool split-path storyline that encouraged the party to think about what force might be more dangerous than others and try to nip those in the bud first. As far as playing the campaign went, things went remarkably well. I ended up giving the DM a lot of advice on how to streamline his storytelling methodology, which unfortunately needed a lot of work. The DM was receptive to this and worked very hard to improve the story any way he could, and often asked my advice on how to introduce characters or themes into the story to spice things up or slow them down. This to say, I got along very well with the DM and helped him sort of co-DM the campaign, though I insisted that I be left in the dark so I could play without spoiling myself. We became very fast friends. The horror of this relatively normal-seeming campaign came from the barbarian.
Of course it did, because barbarians are always...
Well, this is a little different than that. From the very beginning, I had my suspicions that barbarian might have been on the spectrum, or at the very least, a touch nerdier than is generally socially acceptable, which is fine in so far as it doesn't become disruptive, which, as you might be guessing by reading this, it did. It started with Barbarian's character being nearly a one-for-one knockoff of an anime character, which Barbarian made sure to constantly remind us of with, so you know this character from X series? He's basically that. Now, Barbarian was very good at roleplay, and nobody complained about his play style or in that regard. The trouble came from Barbarian's constant critiquing of the situation at any given time. This manifested in comments about monsters' AC being too high, or the damage of NPCs that we were not so subtly encouraged to run from being too high, or ignoring obvious mechanics during fights and getting frustrated when that fight became harder or boring because of it. Additionally, during the chit-chat between turns, Barbarian would always reference some obscure TV show or character out of nowhere, and if any of us said we didn't know what he was talking about, he would go out of his way to explain the reference, which wouldn't be such a big deal except that he did this all the time. And the pace of the game and roleplay was often disrupted because of it. This was especially intrusive when during roleplay, when one of us was in character, he would out of character interject with, "Oh, so it's like X from Y." And if we said we had no idea who X or Y was, well, I won't belabor the point. Things culminated as the party was fighting a mid-boss on top of a mechanical subterranean railway worm, working our way from the back to the front. Yes, it was as cool as it's...
Yeah.
The fight ended when I, out of spell slots and with 4 HP remaining after taking an opportunity attack from the boss, broke away and rushed to a terminal at the front of the rail worm, interacting with it and making the worm arc its back and grind the boss against the ceiling until it was dead. That's awesome.
That was dope as hell. I love it.
I love that. It was a satisfying ending for everyone. Everyone except the barbarian, who throughout the fight and immediately afterward bellyached about the DM making monsters hit too hard or the use of overly oppressive mechanics. The boss had a passive level down AoE and 2 guards that couldn't die unless they died at the same time. He repeatedly kept comparing the DM's style to the styles of other game masters he had seen in popular campaigns on social media, saying that because they did or didn't do certain things, the DM was wrong to do or not do other certain things. The DM tried to explain that the that a lot of the difficulty was due partly to the party rushing in to the fight unprepared, and that as a military man in real life, rushing into a situation unprepared often led to injury or death. To which Barbarian dared to go so far as to accuse the DM of being warped and jaded because of their experience in the military, which you might have gathered was a step too far. Most of us, yeah, but most of us were quiet when the DM tried to de-escalate the situation, but eventually it became too insufferable. So I spoke up in the DM's defense, calling out the barbarian for all of his complaining and comparing, and for inappropriately airing his grievances about the DM to the whole party, rather than addressing the DM privately. I told him he was out of line to criticize the DM so personally and openly, and in the middle of a session too, as we hadn't ended yet, and that he needed to shape up and mature about things. Having broken the party's silence, the rest began to raise their voices in support of the DM as well, even the cleric whose character had died in that fight.
Oh, damn.
Barbarian, seeing no one was agreeing with him, promptly dismissed his attitude as a consequence of his autism and bid the party good night in a huff. I'm going to say something which I think is probably echoed here, that it's not an excuse.
No.
I'm tired of people using their mental disabilities as an excuse.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
I understand that sometimes, you may say things in the moment or do something or make a decision in the moment that you can trace back to the fact that maybe your understanding of things or the way you handle things is different. But if you fucked up, and instead of blaming it on something that's wrong with you, acknowledge it and apologize.
You have to take responsibility for your choices and your actions.
You can still make the mistake. The mistake is not an issue.
It's okay.
It's how you carry yourself after the mistake. In my opinion, the right thing to do here is to apologize and take ownership of it and be like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
I mean, that's
all you have to do. You don't.
That's what separates people from being.
We all have something that we probably don't want to do, and sometimes we end up doing it, whatever. And whether it's a behavioral issue, whether it's your own personal issue, or
neurodivergence,
or
whatever,
anything like that, but it's better to just take the high road and be like, I'm sorry, I will do my best not to have that happen again. I mean, no personal, whatever.
Like OP says, be mature about it.
Please, try.
If something or someone is important to you, legitimately, if you care about what you gain from this, what you get from this, and you want to legitimately show your dedication, your consideration, then that, like Sam said, for all intents and purposes, grow some proverbial balls and acknowledge your fuck up. Acknowledge, okay, you know what? Maybe I said too much there, or maybe I came off in a wrong way. If you really didn't mean it, then acknowledge how you did come off to them, how they felt. Again, maybe it is true. That's not your intention. They can't say that it was your intention, but if you really are trying to establish some sort of understanding and connection, you have to acknowledge, okay, you know what? Maybe I did mess up there. Maybe I fucked up.
Maybe that's my fault.
And I will apologize if that's how it came across. That was not my intention. I will do my best to reshape kind of my approach or my whatever. But don't, like Sam said, don't just literally say I'm autistic, so you just have to expect that, and you have to accept that, and you have to be okay with that. And it's that's not how that works.
That's just a cop out.
You're just being selfish, if not narcissistic, and if not deliberately douchebaggy by trying to use again. The perfect example is Peter Griffin from Family Guy, when he quote unquote found out that he was apparently legally, mentally not there, right? Where he was smart enough though to take advantage of that.
Yeah, to use it to disadvantage.
To start taking advantage and abusing that by doing literally whatever he wanted, and then giving everybody an excuse. Well, it's I'm mentally, whatever. And then they would just be like, "Ah, bless your heart," they would.
I'm pretty sure Cartman did it in South Park as well.
Yeah, Cartman did it too.
It's not it's not a tell-all of now I don't have to adhere to societal.
Oh, I don't have to continue to be considerate. I don't have to take responsibility for myself for my actions or choices. That's not what that is. It's meant as an enlightening thing, so that you can better understand why you might feel certain ways, why you might make certain choices or decisions, to maybe help you make better ones.
Yeah, it's more of a I'm not saying you have to understand everything that
No.
happens, but you need to try if you want, especially if you want to
It
do something where you're interacting with others.
exactly, it gives you the opportunity.
It's
If you know, okay, I have this thing, right? My mind functions like this. That gives you the opportunity to be like, okay, I need to make sure that I do this to make sure that I am understanding things properly and I'm conveying my own thoughts and feelings properly because I know that my mind can function differently. It that is the point of knowing what your thing is to help you better navigate the world, people, relationships, everything. It's
yeah,
not meant as an excuse or a crutch to rely on to justify
yeah,
shitty behavior or actions.
definitely not. But to get back to it, obviously we left
Continuing
it
on.
off. Barbarian never really did learn to avoid tangents or stop complaining. I never appreciated how he never apologized to the DM, as far as I was aware. And after the DM considerately agreed to take his advice to heart and double check his NPCs and monsters' stat blocks. As someone with a family member with family members who have autism, using it as an excuse for inappropriate behavior is never ever acceptable. Barbarian also had a very bad habit of demeaning any form of religion, going out of his way to make inappropriate comments to the party whenever the subject was even remotely referenced. When this happened, the party collectively, including the DM, shut him down, peacemaking and bringing things back to the subject at hand. However, Barbarian always needed to have the last word, offering an "I'll just say this," and the party trying to interrupt, saying "No, we're dropping it," to which he went on to offer his final 2 cents, "Oh, anyway," with a "and that's all I'll say." This particular behavior got so bad the DM had to pull me aside and I asked if I wanted him to have him kick the Barbarian out of the campaign. As a religious person myself, I'm open to debate and conversation, and welcome anyone to conversate about what they believe without prejudice, which the DM was aware of. I said that while I found the barbarian's behavior distasteful, I didn't think it was my place to make that decision and left it to the DM's discretion one way or another. The climax to all of this occurred after a long multi-session heist had been planned. In the midst of the operation, one of the major BEGs crashed the party, demanding the party's surrender. The I knew the DM was stoked for this fight, as he'd been telling me he had the perfect music plan for when the BEG showed up, and had been preparing for this encounter all week. Initiative is rolled, music kicks on, and we're off to the races. Or at least we would have been. We were barely 2 rounds into combat when the BEG caught one of the players with an ability that subtracts one of the affected player's death saving rolls. 2 fails equals death instead of 3. That's a pretty harsh, that's kind of ooh.
That's a lot. I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, like, despite how the problem player has been handling things poorly, like maybe some of his grievances or gripes isn't entirely unwarranted per se, in terms of like
Yeah.
some of
I
the
mean that's
mechanics here.
harsh. That's a
Like,
harsh, that's a harsh punishment.
and I would just say, like, hopefully, maybe it's like I would assume it's not permanent, of course, and I would also hope that like there might be ways, like maybe it only lasts for a certain amount of time, you
Maybe you can
know.
save from it. Maybe they can only do it so many times. Like I'm assuming it takes an action to do, so that would give
Yeah.
the players an opportunity to get some damage
I
down.
would also be interested to know like what level they are that
Yeah,
he's
that's another thing.
that's the biggest. Like again, if they're like level 15 or something, I would say this is far like this is far
Yeah, I've
less
dealt
like
with worse.
egregious. Yeah, like if they're like level 15, it makes a lot more sense why they might be dealing with this kind of like intensity. Because like, okay, yeah, that's fair. Level 50, you can bring people back from the dead at that point. So it's not as big a thing. But if they're obviously like level 7 or level 6, I'd be like, that might be a little crazy. But anyway, please do continue.
Yeah. While the party was reeling with excitement from the revelation, the barbarian was less than thrilled. He piped up, breaking through the tension and ambiance with the grace of a nail-spiked bat. Hey DM, did I ever tell you your boss fights are bullshit? Now, personally, I think the barbarian did mean it as a joke, but if it was poorly timed, and as the straw that broke the camel's back, the DM stopped the fight right then and there, had his say with Barbarian, and promptly asked him to leave the campaign. Again, the Barbarian offered his justification for his words about how he'd seen other campaigns handled online, but there was no one doing what was done, and the Barbarian was forced to leave the campaign. To make matters worse, we had just brought a new player to replace Cleric, who was dipping out to focus on school that session. Unsurprisingly, the new player did not stay either. While the campaign is still ongoing, we had to look for 2 new players to replace Cleric and Barbarian, which was a trial in and of itself. Sadly, I think our Barbarian simply suffered from the disparate shock of playing a game that didn't follow the methods of popular RPG streams that he liked. I'm sure there's a moral in this story, but I'm frankly too exhausted to transcribe it fully, so I'll keep it short. Mind your P's and Q's in a social setting. This includes knowing when to say nothing at all. If you've got a problem you can't stay silent about, take it up to the DM in private. If the DM makes a decision that you're not happy with, it's better to leave the campaign than to complain about everything you don't like, especially if you're complaining out in the open. If it's not fun for you, it's not fun for the other players, and it's definitely not fun for the DM. And remember the golden rule: no D&D is better than bad D&D. I mean, in my opinion, I've had some fights and encounters with harsh mechanics.
Same.
And I think, you know, some of those fights I would not want to go through again. For there's very specific reasons, examples of things that I don't think were. There's a difference between a harsh mechanic and a unfair
bullshit mechanic. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think something like this toes the line, but it with this, obviously this is from OP's perspective, which changes things. But in my opinion, if OP is excited and that seems the other party members are relatively excited for this bit of the encounter, that means that this isn't the only time they've had high stakes mechanics, most likely, is what I would infer. And so if the rest of the table is pretty like
excited and jazzed for it, though.
This is tough, but you know, there are ways to avoid stuff like that. There are ways to, you know, there's things like, well, if death saving throws are the problem, don't let someone go down long enough that they have a death saving throw. Be strategic. There's ways to avoid a problem like this. Is scary, but not unavoidable or not unsolvable, or at least like there's a way to get around it in a sense of planning.
Yeah.
If the mechanic was, oh, you know, one of your scores is halved, your dex is halved, like that's not really a mechanic you can get back from or fix.
Not easily, unless you're able to again, like dispel it or something, or if it only lasts like, you know, like I don't know, you know, a couple rounds or something.
Yeah,
you know, like there are certain like enemies, for instance, like the shadows. You know, shadows do that kind of thing where they suck your strength stat for every hit. But the turnaround for that though is that they are very weak in comparison. They don't have a lot of hit points or AC, and so they're very much glass cannons in that if you're unlucky enough to take a number of hits and get unlucky rolls, your character could not only like be really messed up, it further weakens them, because if you're a strength-based character, you're kind of screwed and you could die even. But conversely, if you handle them well and you take them out quickly. So I mean, with this, like I said, that's why I would be really interested to know what level were they? Like, what level was all this happening? Because again, that would vastly change the outlook on if this is, like Sam said, a difficult mechanic aspect or just a fucked up bullshit mechanic aspect, where it's like, because again, it sounds to me like Sammy said too, is like, you know, all the other players are having fun with these kind of more, you know, difficult,
like the tone seems
harder
like,
things.
This is normal.
Yeah, and it's like, again, maybe there are certain mechanics here or there that the GM does that might be kind of like
towing the line a bit.
Yeah, questionable in terms of like, you know, but if it's done in lieu of fun, like, you know, I mean, like I said, with the mechanic of like, oh, these two enemies can only die if you kill them at the same time. Okay. So how exactly is that functioning? Like, because that's an interesting concept and aspect. I kind of like that. Are they comparably weak then? Like, are they kind of just like, you know, maybe two bandits where like if they attack you, they can attack you maybe once, maybe twice, and it's like a D6 of damage each time, but they're effectively immortal unless you can take them both out at the same time. So how do you take them both out at the same time then? Obviously, you could do an AoE attack, could do it, or could it be like, hey, on the same turn, if you drop him to 0 hit points and you can drop the other one to 0 hit points during the same turn, does that effectively count then? Because that's definitely possible. Like, I could see that working and that not being too crazy of a mechanic or a thing. There seems to be, again, just like a lot of issues and stuff. And I will say, I don't necessarily agree with OP in saying, like, if you've got a problem, like, you know, don't say it out loud or in public or whatever, where I'm like, sure, I definitely agree that you should, if you're having issues or anything, you should have a conversation with the GM initially first. If there's some problem that you think like the GM can help with, but if the same things just kind of keep happening regardless, at that point, it's like, well, maybe you should have a conversation with everybody about it, like bring it to the table to then ask everyone how everybody is feeling. Because the whole point is that this is a group activity. And like it or not, for this kind of thing, it really is kind of a majority feeling or vote kind of thing of like, hey, if the majority likes to play this way, or if they're comfortable, if they're satisfied with what's happening, then whoever's maybe feeling the odd one out maybe shouldn't be a part of it, because they're like, you know what, this might just not be right for me. We've said it millions of times and we'll say it a million more times. It's just, that is the unfortunate truth at times, and it doesn't feel great. It never feels great to be the odd one out when you're just like, because you want to have fun. You want to have fun with these people, you want to make some friends, you want to make some great memories. And it's like, if you're the only one not having fun, that does suck. But it's better to be aware of that consciously instead of like being afraid to confront that.
Yeah.
And just staying in a situation that is not good for you, that you don't have fun with, you don't like.
Yeah. And then there's ways, I think, to tactfully, you deal with it at the time. You deal with it at the time. You play through the session, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If it's so egregious, then be like, hey, can we take like a quick break and ask to talk to the DM and be like, hey, this makes me feel this way. Like, is this intentional? Do you think, am I just kind of out of line here? Like thinking this way? Like,
could we come up with some ways, some solutions maybe to help me with this? Like,
or maybe it's just, maybe that encounter is just going to be that encounter and they learn from it. That's also been the case. Is I played with people that like, they're like, well, what, we're going to stick with this because this is what I planned, but I'll take in what you're saying to account because I don't want anyone to feel that way at the table. And that's okay. Even if that encounter just isn't what you want for that encounter, it's okay that like not everybody enjoys it as everyone else. As long as those things are being heard and people are being respected, I think it's okay. And like, because I've had those. I've had multiple, even DMs I still play with, like the 2 DMs I play with now. One of them I've played with straight for 4 years in the same game. And fuck me if there's been multiple encounters and things that I just was like, this is not it. And I've talked to him about it. And, a lot of these things were, changed. Some of them weren't. And like, there's a point of like, sometimes that's just
how
like
it goes. Yeah.
And like, it's not necessarily like an affront to you specifically.
No.
But it's going to be something that you're maybe not going to like as much, but you can voice your opinion and hopefully they'll hear it. And if it continues to be that bad, then find a different game to play. If it doesn't continue to be that bad, you have to take positives and negatives, weigh your pros and cons of like, I might not like this specific.
I was going to say, I mean, nothing and no one is perfect, no. Like, it's like, but and you take, as with anything in life, the good and with the bad, and you decide if the good outweighs the bad, and maybe it might not even be like bad in this sense, where it's just like, hey, this just isn't something you personally like, it shows your strength of character, of self, to be able to accept and handle maybe some stuff you don't like as much for the things that you do really like and that you get out of it, like, that's just life. That's just how it goes with everything. And it is unfortunate when you have some people that like, they not only can't necessarily handle the bad, but they don't really seem to appreciate any of the good either. And then they make their less than satisfactory existence everyone else's problem, right? Or experience everyone else's problem. Like, that's not okay. And at the end of it all, like, yeah, like, I think it probably was best that this player, the Barbarian, just left. It is unfortunate that they had that particular falling out when they got a brand new player who I guess got maybe a little freaked out by it and was like, whoa, and like dipped out too. So now they're currently looking for 2 new players. But like, yeah, it probably was for the best that Barbarian just left, because it seemed like they just weren't really having fun. And we've said this before many times as well, is don't I would say probably for most things, undue comparison is is probably the mother of like implosion, right? Of just basically wrecking whatever. If you're just constantly comparing anything that you have, anything that you see, anything that you feel to something else that you feel for whatever reason is just markedly better, like it's not great. Like comparison is only helpful to get again perspective, right? You're able to get better perspective, to have better understanding of like, okay, that's a thing, but that thing isn't necessarily better than what I have now. It's something different. And I can use the aspects of what I like about that maybe to then maybe try to implement it here. But you have to do it again in a fair, reasonable way. Like, I don't really know, like, Barbarian just saying, like, well, I like this better here, how they do it here. And it's like, you can maybe still introduce that to your GM, right? You can maybe have your GM maybe start implementing it, like be like, hey, I was watching this other show or this other like actual play, like whatever, and I really liked this one like kind of mechanic or how they did that here. Like, what does everybody think? You guys might be interested in maybe trying to implement that in our campaign too. Like, there are absolute ways to go about doing it without being a dick, you know? Like, you don't have to be an asshole about it. But he clearly didn't do that, and he just kind of had a very entitled aspect to him. So I hope maybe even the Barbarian, I hope maybe he learns from this a bit, because like OP said, like even if the Barbarian kind of said it as a joke, because it could have been a perfectly harmless joke where he was like, hey, have I ever told you your boss fights are bullshit? Like, you could just say it as like a joke, and it would be like, if you have that kind of rapport, it would be funny. But because of all of the previously built up established dynamic, GM took it like as the last nail in the coffin and blew up about it. And it's understandable. If you're just sitting there, for however long, just complaining about everything, even the seemingly smallest, most innocuous comments can just blow up. But yeah, unless you have anything else you want to say about this one, Sammy, I do believe that that's all we have here for you. So let's move on to the next post of the day, everyone. This story is titled, it's actually an Am I the Asshole post that they meta discussion specifically, titled PFS New Players Expected to Memorize Entire Setting, by Deborah Selch. AITA. I apologize, this is a long write-up, but please read all before finalizing opinions. Background: I've played TTRPGs for around 15 years, with the majority of my experience being in homebrew campaigns. I was also a game store / convention GM for D&D Next, 5e's beta, as well as 5e Adventures League for a few years, with my tables focusing more so on low-level and beginner player content. I do have ADHD, which comes up at the very end of the story. Leading up, so I've not been enjoying WotC's handling of things lately, and I've been trying to go away from D&D. Understandable. In trying other systems out, I decided to try out Pathfinder 2nd Edition and reached out to someone I knew from history who enjoyed Pathfinder 1st Edition. Excuse me. This friend, who I knew from real life, but who was ghosted all real-life hangouts the last few years and only communicates with me online, now invited me to a TTRPG server that he is a mod and GM for, saying they do Pathfinder Society play all the time. We shall call him Ghostman. Leading up, part 2, the first game. So to understand the rules, I joined in a Pathfinder Society one-shot hosted by a different GM who we shall call McLibrary. We are given pre-gens with the background blurb of we are students at a school. And looking a bit older than teenagers, I assume this is college and play a degenerate, overconfident college cheerleader who slowly goes from nothing can touch me to we're effed and going to die over the session. The session went well, and the GM, McLibrary, comments that I would like some pirate orc lady who is one of the heads of the Pathfinder Society, as she spikes healing potions with booze just like my character did. Encouraged, I start making my actual character over the next week. Make Library provides the technical help of making sure the character is made correctly from a mechanic standpoint, but whenever I bring up questions about the setting, I'm referred to entire books such as the Lost Omens Setting Guide. While making my character, I am transparent with my intents on how I'm going to play them, citing inspirations such as Geralt from The Witcher, Frieren, and Wolverine. I make an ancient dark elf who has escaped from the Darklands and has a negative/jaded view on current society. Being new to the surface, she has 0 society and 0 diplomacy. This will come into play shortly.
Sounds like my Pathfinder 2e character. He's great.
I'm sure. The problem game setting up. So Ghostman has decided, since we have a few new players in the server, to host a beginning adventure to help our initiates start their career. I don't know why she put all of those in quotation marks, but I join, new player 2 joins. Or I join, new player 2 joins, McLibrary joins, and since we are apparently too few of people to play, Ghostman gives us iconic NPC to help us out. Our characters begin by being invited to a huge party in the Pathfinder Lodge to celebrate the many new initiates. Again, why with all the quotation marks? I don't see how this is like. It all seems like that is what's happening. We do things like meet the orc pirate who spikes health potions and such. Since there are lots of awkward silences as no one is role playing, I decide to the instigating initiate. Oh, I decide to be the instigating initiator of conversation. I feel like that's a little bit of a redundant sentence, but okay.
As instigating initiator?
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit.
It's like you could just say I am the instigator or I am the initiator of conversation. Anyway, as these heads of the Pathfinder Society are giving us busy work they didn't want to do themselves, my character complains how these heads aren't going to remember our names by the time we complete their missions, and how they expect us to fade into history like the dead low-level Pathfinders we, along with the other initiates of the party, are replacing. Problem situation 1. We meet a Pathfinder head while they are talking to a diplomat. The diplomat is saying that their queen is new to the throne and doesn't have the people behind her yet and is asking for the Pathfinder Society's help. My character casually speaks her own spicy political opinion. A queen needing to bring in outsiders to quell local unrest is a sign of weakness. Such a queen is likely not going to stay on the throne long if she can't gain the trust of her own people. I'm immediately told to make a diplomacy check, and I crit fail. And I'm told that the diplomat gives me a look of disgust, and it is obvious that she views this as me making a threat. I don't think more on this issue, but it will come up at the very end of the story. The rest of the party shares a "that was stupid" without further explanations at the time, in or out of character. I mean, yeah, like I guess I would again ask like what her intention is. Like I don't see why she's maybe trying to overtly like potentially make an enemy or just to potentially just insult the queen, the sovereign queen of a nation. Like seems inadvisable, but you know. Problem situation 2. We are sent to a haunted house to retrieve a dead priest of Pharasma who died trying to cleanse it, whose only indicative markings is a symbol of Pharasma worn as a necklace. My character is saying, sounds easy to find. Most would not openly wear the symbol of the Lady of Death. I personally would not want her to mistake it as an invitation myself. The party is again like, what the F? Is she threatening us? And I'm stating, no. Like, from what I've read, it's people like gravekeepers who wear this, and most people are kind of superstitious about death. I mean, it is kind of like wearing a Grim Reaper necklace. We're looking for a goth AF priest. Through looking around investigation, we learned that this used to be a slave trading house, and upon entering one room, my character fails to save and gets possessed by angry spirits until she was cleansed by iconic NPC. I state that there must be something in this room, and we start searching. We find papers that are the transaction history of the sold slaves. I state my character hands the papers over and says, we should burn these. The entire party is immediately like, what the F? And I explain that after watching way too much Supernatural, both me and my character think that this must be the physical anchor keeping the spirits here. Cleansing it through burning would allow them to pass on, and since it is proof of their slavery, erase the fact that they were owned, therefore freeing them. Again, I don't know how logical that might be per se. It seems like there's a lot of assumptions going on there. I'm immediately attacked by angry ghosts in chains, and my character says, "This is what we get for not burning that and setting them free." Now they're angry at us. All I get is more awkward silence as combat ensues. Problem situation 3. We are to get a copy of a scroll from a college of magic. We're told it's on the 3rd floor, but the proctor is doing a ritual, and we are not to disturb them. We go up to the floor and enter the room to find 3 students and the proctor trying to stabilize an obvious ritual gone wrong, and it is obvious we will need to lend our aid. We have to succeed with nature or crafting to close 6 different portals that are summoning ads. I'm training in nature and close 3 of them myself. We have someone training in crafting that closes 2 of them, and the final gets closed with some help. Due to not having enough people, as well as some really bad rolls, this encounter goes very badly. I'm talking everyone goes down twice and has to be healed back to consciousness by iconic NPC. The damage is told to us as void. So new player 2 is like, oh, so we're getting hit by like Cthulhu energy. To which McLibrary corrects, due to the remaster, it's actually closer to necrotic damage. And I'm like, either way, they were doing some dark ritual. Okay. The proctor thanks us for saving their life, but due to the encounter going badly, all 3 students died. Having nearly been killed by a dark ritual gone awry and seeing a teacher abuse their power, causing the death of their students, my character goes to the proctor and slaps them, stating, "You are way too young to be handling such magic. Your precautions were reckless at best." Here is where the session ends due to time limit. Aftermath, the real problem. Nearly immediately after the session, Ghostman DMs me stating that I'm lucky notoriety wasn't enforced in this game, and he links me the page for how notoriety works. He states that the 3 listed problem situations would have given me 1 notoriety each, which upon reading the page, it states that 3 notoriety means your character is kicked from society play. This guy's literally saying I'm lucky he didn't immediately kick my character from ever participating in another game. I screenshot the rule on the page stating that the GM is supposed to warn a player an action can cause notoriety and allow them to not do the action, and stated he never warned me. His response was that he didn't warn me because he didn't have to, because the module told him notoriety wasn't in play for it. We go in depth in what the problems were. Problem 1, insulting the diplomat. He states that Pathfinders are supposed to be diplomats and go through a 3-year diplomatic training before being initiated. I state that I did not know this, and if I did, I would have had my character handle the situation differently if I had known this beforehand. And if I did, I would have had... Oh, where is it? Ah, there it is. For situation 2, he states, as Pathfinders, it is our job to give such papers to our superiors. Destroying them would be seen as disobedience. He then states the papers are the only way for the society to find the victims and lay them to rest properly, and that I was attacked for suggesting they be burned. This was not stated during the session, only in this argument afterward. For session 3, it would be for slapping a superior. I countered with this. Again, the structure is strange. I counter this with that a teacher who killed their students with an evil ritual, isn't that like BBEG type stuff? To which he responds, no, it's okay because the students signed off on it by participating in the ritual. It's your fault you failed to save them in time. Yeesh. I start saying it seems there were some setting expectations that I was not aware of. Norm formed about beforehand, and that he, as a GM for a new player, for a new player table. Oh, for a new player table, should have probably gone over these at the start or mentioned while I was making my character. He then said, I have no one to blame but myself, another typo, for not reading the material, and that it's his job as GM to enforce the rules, not to spoon feed information you should already know. I respond, I was given entire books to read and not much time to read them, and am 100% new to the setting. It's ridiculous to expect someone to remember every detail like that. To this, he brings up that he knows me and how I will hyperfocus on things when I first get into them, and as such, just expected me to hyperfocus on the book and know everything. A symptom of my ADHD, and it's not even how hyperfocus works. AITAH. End post. So, What do you, for off the top, what do you think, Sammy? Is OP AITA?
In my opinion, no. Um, Obviously, I don't know everything that went on, but from what was said, I would say no. Like the reality is that I don't think the taking out the burn the papers thing, it sounds like they genuinely thought that that was the answer, not like a weird trying to hide something,
No.
not a weird
Oh, they
I'm a
100%, I think, thought that that would be
yeah.
helpful for
So
sure.
they were wrong, but I've played with people who made decisions for that, and I don't consider that a problem. I don't consider the talking to the diplomat in the way they did a problem. If they had chosen to do that, like in the queen's presence, in her personal, like if they were, say, called to meet with the queen, and that's when you choose to make comments like that directly to her face, yeah, like some things are going to happen, and that, but to me, at a party full of diplomats and things, people talk shit in real life. I don't think that that's any different from how things would go in any other instance. And I also don't think they were wrong in saying what they did because, no offense, yeah, in any basic royal hierarchy, if someone's trying to change the way things work but doesn't have support, yeah, they're not going to do very well. And that's not a threat in my opinion. It's just an observation to me at least. Now that I'm not going to say they are free of criticism because they certainly are not. You chose to play a character that is a bit antagonistic towards the things going on around them. Now, I don't know if that is an antagonistic, like just being a bit and like just kind of being a little bit annoying, or like genuinely antagonistic to them trying to accomplish things. It isn't really said in the like there's nothing to prove either way. To me, it sounds more like you just made an annoying character, which is fine. They exist at a table for a reason. Every character has their own,
Other quirks,
no, like motivations and things. Like
True.
100%, there could be genuine reason for a character behaving like that I wouldn't
Oh, yeah.
hate at a table. My character might not like your character, but as a player, that might bring in some things that actually are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this person suffered from playing an insufferable character, not being an insufferable person. I also don't agree with the DM in most of this. I find the assumption that you memorize the whole setting to be ridiculous. I don't like the fact that literally the rule that they're trying to like not actually threaten with, but allude to this person being to OP being a problem. They were saying, "Oh well, in any other game you wouldn't be here because your character would have been kicked out already." And in all honesty, one, they proved that the module isn't relying on those points. Two, even if you were using those points, the DM should have talked to you the first time you did anything at that diplomat party. And in my opinion, I think the DM's just a bit of a douche. Your character's kind of annoying. Obviously, I don't know if that doesn't make you an asshole, and I don't even know if your character is even really that bad in the grand scheme of things. Because for me, I would have to make that call by actually playing with someone like that. But from what I'm reading, no, I don't think so. And I think the expectations of going off of rules that aren't actually being used, and basically this like veiled threat of like, well, in any other game you'd be gone, I think is a super immature veiled threat that I do not understand in the context of anything. You are muted, by the way. Like, you're not coming through at all.
What the?
No, now you're right here. Hey.
Ah, there we go. Weird. For some reason, my mic.
Yeah, your mic thought it was.
Yeah, because I wasn't muted on here, but weird. All right.
Yeah,
Strange. I'll
but
have to check it
that's
later. But
that's
yeah.
kind of how I feel about it.
I mean, I would say like I definitely think. I guess first I would even say like for the am I the asshole? Honestly, I personally I feel like kind of almost everybody here is a little bit of an asshole. I don't think everybody is one party is either solely just the asshole or not for myself because like I'll definitely even say like from what I've read like OP themselves also kind of just sounds a little like not insufferable but just again a little personally in their own shit kind of thing. Where same thing with this kind of character. Like I agree 100%. I feel like the character they made was just problematic from off the cuff. Like I really think it was a bad decision to make a character like this for a brand new group that you have never met before. Like again, she specifically said that she took inspiration from like, you know, Geralt, The Witcher, Frieren, and Wolverine, all of which are normally much more abrasive, kind of just in your face, you know, matter of fact characters, right? But the thing being is they also do have like a bit of a lone wolf, literally. I mean, in case of Geralt, more literally, but they have a lone wolf thing to them. And one of the things about at least Wolverine is about his growth and maturity as a character and a person, about he found a family in the X-Men, and about realizing that he shouldn't maybe be as much of a lone wolf and shouldn't be as much of a overt asshole if he doesn't have to be. Whereas here, again, you don't have that same kind of thing with her character. Like again, your character is brand new to these people. Like you have never played with these people, you've never done this before. So making the type of character, like I would say you should only really make this kind of character after you've already established a much more solid foundation of like relationship and trust and rapport with the GM, with your fellow players and all of that, so that they know, oh, you're not just being an asshole or a dick. You know, it's like this is a character choice you're making to like have an interesting arc and development.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think this might have been the best type of character to bring, but
yeah, like and because again, just in regards to like her decisions and choices, I definitely don't think that she meant to mess anything up, or she's not meaning to be of that person or disrupt anything at all. I think she was legitimately trying to have fun and just create interesting whatever, but most of her decisions and choices were kind of just like not very smart or just kind of douchey in character specifically, where it's like, like they're again, even if it's not the queen yourself you're talking to, you're still talking to a visiting diplomat who literally has the queen's word. Like they are speaking on behalf of the queen, meaning they have that kind of power. And for you to just like overtly say this when they're literally asking for help, and it's again, she's not wrong in what she says, but that's also kind of the point of the queen asking for help. Like you don't know the other situation either happening. So your character, just who's apparently supposed to be an ancient, like wise, older character, should maybe have a little bit more wherewithal to be like, I don't know all of the current situation or circumstances of what's going on. The queen might not necessarily have all of the support of the people due to maybe she was suddenly propelled into this position out of nowhere, or a lot of other potential circumstances happening. And so simply just like making this comment is just kind of, again, short-sighted and immature in my opinion, and where it's just like, you don't really have enough context or information to really make any kind of statement. And if you do so, it just kind of shows you being immature and douchey for no reason, really.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see the point in this. For problem number 2, same thing. Is it's like, she apparently says that, oh, we should burn these things. And the reason she gives for coming to that conclusion is because she watches way too much Supernatural. And so, in fact, that feels like more of a metagaming thing, like an out of character thing, to be like, well, because I've seen like way too much Supernatural, I know that a lot of the time when ghosts or whatever stick around, it's because they have an anchor point of an object or something. And so these papers must obviously be it's like, well,
I would say that's not really a metagame issue. It's more of an assumption issue.
Well, but I'm saying she's basing it off of apparently watching Supernatural. Now, the thing being is like, that's not necessarily, she's not wrong in that a lot of the time, if you do have like, you know, a poltergeist or revenant or wraith, any kind of, like unrestful soul that is still here, it's not necessarily always because of an object. It can be, but it also could be because they have not accomplished something. And her logic in saying, oh, well, if we burn the papers that show that they were bought, it'll no longer have the representation of them being bought. It's like, well, no, they will, because they experienced it. Like,
there's other ways to get that info.
The papers themselves, quite frankly, are probably even less important because of more so just the experiences that they had. And again, my point being is like, it's definitely a good idea, or not. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but I feel like the reason she got to it, she didn't maybe explain it fairly. Because again, if she's going off of, well, because of my experience from Supernatural, this is why I came to this conclusion. It's like, well, how do you explain that in game then? Because your character's never seen the show
Yeah,
Supernatural.
you could, and this player could have done better at
And
definitely.
then she had an attitude about it, like after the party was like, what the hell? Because then she was trying to justify it, being like, see, this is why they're attacking us, because we didn't do what I said, which is like, again, it shows you're supposed to be an ancient elf being who's been around for a while. Your character comes off just being very juvenile and immature and kind of whiny and complainy for not a lot of reason. Like you're not actually drawing attention to some legitimate problems or issues. It's more like you're just kind of acting like a know-it-all, like kind of an arrogant know-it-all. And so that's why, again, your character is probably not, again, the best for the situation. Why maybe a lot of the other players in the GM even were feeling the way they were feeling. And then same thing for situation 3, where all this happens, and then she goes up and slaps the proctor for causing the death of the students and saying that you're way too young to be handling such magic and your precautions were reckless at best. So it's never stated how old this proctor is to us. So we don't know. I don't know if it was ever stated to her as well as the fact that she's claiming, like, again, she's old, so she can say anybody is young, but she also then should be aware, like, if this person's human and they're 80 years old, it's like they're not young by human years. You know, they're up there and have experienced plenty of life. Maybe by elf years they would be, but that also again would show like you're kind of acting in a place of ignorance or immaturity or whatever. Like, and again, so I say all that to say, like, that's my viewpoint kind of on the OP, and that there's a lot of issues and mistakes that I think that she made. I think that she should have been much more like, again, not questioning or whatever, but like just like I feel like she made a lot of very strong, powerful choices, and they just kind of all happened to be kind of bad or wrong. I think her character kind of made a lot of the wrong decisions, and she could have probably conducted herself better in terms of just like, yeah, if this is your first real game, like you had a one shot before, but this is a brand new group, your first real game. This is about trying to learn. You probably shouldn't be making a character who's kind of just overtly a douchebag, a bit, kind of a jerk, to start off with, to really start to learn better. That being said, though, I also agree the GM effed up tons of times here too, and that I think he could have helped a lot of her things that happen by, again, doing his goddamn job and talking to her during this one shot that was literally meant to do this. Again, with the situation 1 with the diplomat, that was the perfect opportunity to inform both her and the others, like, oh, hey, just as a heads up, like, we're not technically counting it in this module, but for a lot of other situations, if you were to interact or speak to an individual like this, you would risk getting notoriety points added to your character based off of how you interact with certain individuals or people and creatures. And that would have been a great learning experience, because she herself said that she would have conducted herself differently had she been more aware. Now, whether or not she had access to the material to and the time to do it, to be more aware or not, that's subjective. We don't know for certain about that, of course, but that still would have been a perfect opportunity for the GM to do some literal GMing and educational things of like, because from all the excuses the GM gives later on, it's literally just like, well, I just made all these assumptions about you. I assume because of your ADHD, like, you were just hyper focused and then learn every single thing. It's like, bro, shut the fuck up. You fucked up and you know it. All right.
Yeah, it sounds more like someone trying to cover their tracks than
he's covering his ass. He's just spitting excuses, because there's literally, she pulls it up, there's literally a line in the rules he sends her that says a GM is supposed to warn a player, and you never did. And he's like, well, I didn't do it because the module said it wasn't enforced. Bitch, doesn't matter. It's an RPG campaign, okay?
Yeah.
Even if it's not enforced, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't make sure that they're aware. It's literally one of the most spoken phrases in any RPG. Are you sure you want to do this? Yeah. Are you sure about that? It's a great way to, again, gauge, like, hey, I don't know if you're aware, this could have consequences.
Yeah.
Like, perfect opportunity there. It could have cleared up a ton of things. Same thing with the papers. In my opinion, I think it's kind of dumb for her to assume that, like, we should just burn these right away. Like, cause did you do any like magic on them to see if they are like maybe magically connected or attached? Like, again, it's just a huge leap in logic. But regardless, you could have had, again, another outside thing about being like the NPC. You have an NPC there with them who can be your voice of the GM to kind of explain things better, to say like, well, it's normally more standard practice that we deliver these to higher ups or whatever for reasons, whatever, that he already stipulated there. You know, you don't want to be disobedient, and this is the best way to actually to free the souls in order to better find, you know, where they might be, whatever. Like, the GM failed exponentially so as well in this. I think she made a lot of bad decisions, but the GM also equally failed just as much, because there were so many things he could have addressed and fixed so much better. Instead, he decided to just be a dick himself as well. And that's, again, why, for me, I think kind of everybody is a bit of an asshole here, in my personal opinion, because everybody just made all the wrong decisions kind of consistently and did none of these just smallest things about just have a conversation, ask some questions, you know, talk real quick, you know, like something, you know, because again, if the GM does call for like a diplomacy check and you crit fail, it's like, you don't, and she's just like, well, I didn't think anything more of it. And it's like, well, why not? Why? If the GM had you make a check, surely that was for some kind of reason, right? Like, that's usually why you make checks. So maybe you should ask, like, what was that check for? You know, to be sure, because you've never really played Pathfinder before. You don't know what might be happening. Like, plenty of things here. Top voted comment, I think, is also really, I like it a lot, is like, it says like, your character is the kind of pompous prick I'd probably slap in game. And they managed to make every single bad decision, it seems. But that doesn't make you the asshole. The GM fails to convey critical information, but instead expects you to read a ton of material without ever saying so beforehand. That is on them. There is no cost and no reason to not stop the game and warn a player of a potential mistake they would make, be it in rules or in lore. I think that's perfectly stated. Again, I still think that OP is a bit of an asshole too, just because of the decisions they made. They're an adult. They say literally themselves, they have around 15 years of experience with TTRPGs. I also don't think that the GM, like, to be fair, and the GMs as well, like, the GM is not all at fault because of that. She is not a completely brand new player with no idea or understanding of how just general TTRPG etiquette and logic and things works. But she still made a lot of what I would consider kind of rookie mistakes in how you approach or interact, especially with a brand new table. And so I would say everyone here is kind of an asshole. Not fully the asshole, but kind of the asshole. All right. Any other comments you kind of had about this one, Sam? Any other thoughts?
No, I think that was
all right.
As much as I would have there.
But let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next one here. Go ahead and take it away, bud.
Yeah, this is by playing life on hard. I ended up nuking an entire game due to other players' actions with the storyteller's assistant. This has an SA warning.
In-game mutilation as well as excessive violence too.
Yeah, so there's a couple tougher cut topics. In a new high school, I met a bunch of people that were only a couple years older than I was who played RPGs. And we all quickly became fast friends. This story takes place a few years after we had all graduated. White Wolf Games had always been a table favorite. We had a dedicated storyteller who would run the games for us, with the occasional one-off from someone else in the group. Our teller decided they wanted to run an evil character game in Exalted, and everyone was super stoked about the idea. There were only two important characters in this particular horror story. They are my character, Ran, and the problem player, Winter. We all ran through character creation, trying to think of the worst kinds of bastards we could possibly make, and I decided to make a pure dragon-blooded noble, while everyone else made celestial exalted. For clarity's sake, exaltation only happens when one of the many gods of the worlds who are playing the game of life finds someone they especially like and tag them, imbuing them with a mote of their celestial power. Dragon-blooded, on the other hand, are essentially just born that way, and their exaltation is passed through lineage, and it makes the dragon-blooded think less of the lucky celestial exalted. Think prissy Ivy League college mindset, and you've got the right idea. I made the brattiest, most spoiled prince of a high-ranked family you could think of, all wrapped up in a delicious set of inherited magical smart armor that spoke like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I can't say I remember anything about Winter's backstory, aside from the fact that he lost his wife in a tragic backstory kind of way. The game begins with all of us being sailed out in a slave ship of sorts, and we're approached by the powerful captain of the ship who kidnapped us. It happens to be an Abyssal Exalted, which is just a corrupted version of Celestial Exaltation, who offers to give us incredible power in exchange for our undying devotion to him. And he would reward us greatly for doing this job for him. This included Winter's dead wife being brought back to him, even if she was just a little weird after the fact. This will be important later on. Every other player at the table except for my character. I get stares from everyone and I shrug and say, he already thinks he's perfect as he is. He'll do the job, but he won't take what he thinks is a handout. The table agrees that this makes sense, and the first storytelling session ends. And then the teller spends the rest of the night giving everyone else at the table their buffs and bonuses. I wasn't upset by this in the least, and we actually had a conversation later where they told me that they thought it was hilarious that I refused, but that it also made total sense. I can still be an evil bastard. I've got my HAL armor. Little did I know that what Winter had planned for me. Eventually, after everyone but me undergoes their incredibly painful transformations, we arrive at an island where a gigantic artifact.
Dirigible.
Dirigible. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting choice word, honestly.
It is floating above, and the boss man tells us that this is ours, and we're going to have to travel across all of creation to wreak havoc across the world, and eventually get to the temple that may or may not lead us to the realm of the gods.
It's like a zeppelin. It's a blimp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Could have just said blimp. Everyone piles in
again. Interesting
toys.
Choice. Yeah.
Yeah, and gets set up for a rampage, and we set out across an ocean to our first destination. This is the point where the storyteller gives our characters some free time to interact with each other and get to know the other, Jesus Christ, villainous assholes we were going to destroy the world with. It's at this point that Winter decides that he has taken a liking to my character and comes on to mine. Ew. As a little bit of backstory, the guy playing this character was
gets worse, my dude. Trust me, it gets so much worse.
Was essentially your stereotypical horny bard, but in real life, no big deal. That was his jam until this started happening. So he decides Winter wants to hit on Ran, and gradually over the course of travel, gets more and more aggressive until it gets to the point where Ran tells Winter tells Winter no in a physical way. Well, this means it's time for a fight, and because I decide not to take any of the fun corruption bonuses, Ran gets absolutely bodied, and then taken into Winter's quarters, and strapped to the wall and taken. Jesus Christ.
Yep. It gets a little bit worse, my dude. When we get to that part, you might have to censor it just a little bit.
I am not sure why the storyteller allowed this, but I rolled with it because immediately after that fight, I had a plan. Fast forward to a couple of sessions later. We arrived at the city that we're supposed to first take over. Due to scheduling issues, a couple of players not being able to make it to life actually existing outside of the game. We eventually get to the point where Winter describes how he teases my character, using his grim, dark, growing metal fingernails to pierce various parts of Rand's body, explicitly describing particular parts he's doing this to. And the big standout being driving a metal spike through the head of my character's member, and having his revived wife heal me after each session. The absent players are said to be scouting the city looking for weak points. Ron is still chained to the wall, or Rand, sorry, whatever.
Yeah, it's like Ron. It's like Ron.
Ron, and nobody else is doing much of anything else to progress the story. Oh, the explicit descriptions definitely made not just me cringe.
Yeah.
The strangest part about it is how much the players seem to enjoy describing this stuff to me specifically. We're both men, by the way. Not that definitely made it. Oh, by the way, and that made it that definitely made it all the more weird. Another session later, and I approached the storyteller saying that I want to kill my character and maybe make a new one because of Winter. But is there any way I can make Ron go out on his own terms? The storyteller agrees, and I tell him my plan. It seemed like he'd been having a rough time progressing the game, and actually seemed excited to help me with my plan.
Oh boy.
After one of Winter's play sessions, when his wife came to heal my character, I spent all of his willpower points, which are points you can gain by fulfilling your character's nature, and spend to gain free successes on a roll. Oh Jesus.
Yep. Yep.
to, to strangle Winter's resurrected wife to death for a second time. Ugh.
Yeah. No,
No,
this
I mean,
is.
no, I don't, I'm not against that. There
Yeah,
was no way
no, at this
it
point,
succeeded.
it's honestly would be a mercy probably for her too.
There was no way it could have succeeded, whether thanks to my spending points or if the storyteller was just fudging rolls to help me. I proceeded to sneak through the ship, retrieving my armor and getting huge success roll after huge success roll, avoiding all the other players and sabotaging the engine before making my way to the top of the blimp to destroy its integrity. I described my character using a crowbar and channeling his ridiculous strength and charms to begin to pull apart the seams holding the ship together. The storyteller has one of the players that could fly that they were controlling because they had missed yet another game night confront me before botching their roll to kick me out of the way, getting them stuck in the small gap I had managed to create in the seams of the hull. The story that teller then allowed me to stomp a mud hole in that character's head while I continued to pump points into my special abilities to do as much damage as possible. Meanwhile, the rest of the characters were trying to undo the damage that mine had done while Winter lamented his re-dead wife. And my character finally succeeded in breaking apart the top of the ship, letting the air escape. The storyteller described how the blimp crashed into the city below us, uh, Rand standing atop of it, laughing maniacally as it exploded, sending the city center into flames, and how after the rest of the characters managed to escape, but buried in the wreckage of the crash blast blimp and broken buildings was a suit of armor with a gem set in the center and a breastplate that glowed ominously before the scene faded to black. The game did eventually end up falling apart after that, despite the storyteller
Ow.
saying that they'd be using Rand's skeleton being piloted by a smart armor as an antagonist in later sessions. Insanely enough, Winter's player had the absolute absence of thought to say to me that Winter actually loved Rand in his own weird, messed up way, just as much as he loved his wife. I'm happy the game didn't go anywhere after that, and luckily there weren't too many other games that happened after that point where our characters could interact in any sort of meaningful way. Sorry I couldn't have written a better ending to this, but it was definitely the most horrific of horror stories I had, and had been thinking about writing it up for a while. Thanks for reading, and remember, nuclear revenge is best than lying back and taking the mental fingernail through the tip.
Metal
Oh,
fingernail
oh,
through the
well,
tip.
it was a mental fingernail just as much as it was a physical one.
Oh yeah. In post. So, what are your first thoughts about this one, Samuel?
I think the part that gets me more than anything is why this was that they let this
Allowed.
happen.
Yep.
That would
Yeah.
be me, like,
No, yeah, again, I feel that the biggest question or the biggest thing that kind of just pops into most people's minds right away is just why? What, why? 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 How? Like what, like even more so, like this guy still played with them even after going through that, and even after the player of Winter literally goes like, Winter actually really did love Ryan in his own weird effed up way, just as much as he loved his wife. And it's like, again, I just, but I chose this story specifically because I feel like this is a kind of a situation that we don't often see in regards to the fact that they were playing an evil campaign. All these characters were supposed to be evil and messed up in some way, shape, or form. And I would say, like, the GM, I think, maybe didn't understand exactly what that would look like or do, or maybe believe that the way to do that right is to just let them do the most effed up, screwed up shit they could think of, maybe. But like, which I get. Like, I feel like the issue being is evil campaigns are hard to really pull off, in my opinion. Exactly because of things like this, where you're just like, if someone wants to play, like a Joker character who they're just crazy and insane and mindless or whatever, and they just murder or kill or maybe even like assault, and do other sexual degenerate shit to people. Like, it's like, okay, you're evil, cool, so that But then you also have to wonder, you have to ask again, like we always say, right? Like, for what purpose though? What are you doing here? You know, you do have to legitimately, I think, ask and question about that player who is doing this thing here, where you're just like, hey, I want to basically play with and torture another player's character. Why? Why? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like, it seems to me like it was a twisted, effed up like thing that the other player was saying, like, hey, I like you, OP. Hey, do you like me too? It's like, because again, why would that player ever why would that player have fun with this? How is that fun for you to force their player, their character, to do all this horrible shit that you're doing to them? They're not consenting to this. They told you no, as a matter of fact. You didn't talk with the player about this either. You're just forcing them. Like, I don't understand people's thought processes here. What is this for? What are you ultimately trying to accomplish with this? Like,
it's weird and creepy.
Why did the GM allow this to happen? Like, I don't like. I will say I can at least, I guess, appreciate or respect the OP with, like, they had a nuclear response in action. They thought it out. I was like, all right, you know what? Fair enough. Yeah, you took their shit out. Good for you. Although I will ask OP too, like, why didn't you say something out of game though about that? Why didn't you ask the GM, like, what the hell is that? What was that for? Like, why did you still continue to play with them after this? Like, I don't like. I would love to be able to be in an evil campaign, to be able to, again, experience and be part of the more evil aspect. But I think what a lot of people, again, fail to understand is that the best villains are usually the ones who, they still make sense. They're still logical. They're still reasonable to a certain, even there is a method to their madness, right?
Yeah.
Even with the Joker, right? The Joker isn't actually just some mindless, insane, crazy murder hobo. He's not. He is an embodiment of chaos for sure, and that he kind of, like, it's almost impossible to be able to, like, accurately predict what he might do here or there. He does kill people wantonly and just randomly, but again, even with all that, he still has a very specific reason for doing what he does. And he showcases it. And he also balances that out with very impactful, profound, deliberate instances of coherency, where he's just like, yeah, no, I'm not just crazy. I'm conscious. I'm making decisions consciously. Everything I do is purposeful and intentional.
Yeah.
It's not just wild, crazy, and you're just like, like, no, he's actually not. That's what makes his character so great. That's what makes him such a compelling, interesting villain and character. Because he's not just actually insanely crazy. He's crazy and he's messed up, but he knows that. He acknowledges that. And he literally, the whole point is he's saying, like, hey, I'm not that different from anyone else, actually. I'm just acknowledging it more than other people do. It just takes one bad day.
Yeah.
It takes one moment, one unfortunate little incident or experience, and anybody can be pushed over the line like me. Like, I'm not actually that different from like that. That is the whole point. And for here, it's just like so many players, so many people that I've seen make not even evil characters, right? They're just like, oh, they're chaotic neutral, or hell, even chaotic good. And they're just like, the chaotic part just means I can do whatever I want to be just crazy and whatever, like, and it's like, you know what? I know what I'll say. Like, to me, that just comes across as you just want an excuse to be degenerate, to be effed up, to you just want an excuse to let out all those intrusive thoughts you have, and to be justified and try to make it seem like that doesn't have a reflection on you yourself, because you're taking this opportunity to pretend and be like, well, but my character is just, mentally, it's like, that's you, bud. That's you. Your character is you. As we've said with everything, right? there will always be a part of you in every character you make. It's impossible not to, because you made them. That is you in there to some extent. And so you have to take responsibility to that. Don't let yourself bleed into it too much and start taking maybe certain things too personally. But at the same time, you also got to take responsibility for you're the one making the decisions and choices of your character. That's you. It's nobody else. It's nobody else. And yeah, like just, GMs, if you're ever going to run an evil campaign, maybe even more than a normal campaign, you have to have very clear lines and rules and regulations for conduct. Exactly, because you might be delving deeper into much more intense and darker tones and elements if you're going to be doing an evil campaign, right? So it's even more important to be able to have everyone's lines and veils very clearly established and understood. And so that's, I don't know, maybe again, I feel like because the GM was so excited to help OP, I feel like the GM also they were not ready for what was happening.
No, I don't. I think it takes a special type of GM to actually run an evil campaign.
Well,
yeah, because
really,
evil campaigns are difficult.
They're very tenuous. It's a very slippery slope.
It's a balancing act, and it's a rough one at that.
Yeah. So, like this, I think this is just a great kind of, because I know a lot of people are interested in them. A lot of people are interested in doing evil campaigns, but I think this is just a great showcase of like, hey, you need to be ready to what you're potentially getting into. You need to have all your, your P's and Q's sorted. You need to have all your ducks in a row. Like you got to make sure you are very meticulous and methodical if you're going to do an evil campaign. You can't just jump into it willy-nilly, or might be you having a metal long fingernail driven into the tip of your hoo-ha, what's it, call it?
Your Schwingus?
Yeah, your dingle danger, yeah. That, I mean, when I read that the first time, that just sent sharp, intense, spine cringiness all up my spine. Just tingles out the wazoo, bro. Whew. Top voted comment real quick before we move on to the last one. I love evil games, both as a player and a GM. They are good exercises in role playing and allow everyone to explore ideas and such that they might never otherwise get to. However, stories like these are exactly why a session 0 discussing everyone's limits are integral. Even more so for an evil campaign, as we literally just said ourselves, because groups are almost always a mix of my character forecloses for the bank and thinks it's fun, and I'm going to RPSA. Like it's just...
like I think even an evil campaign, there's a difference between those themes being present and those themes being exploited. Because no offense, like if I were to play in an evil game and the DM was like, look, there are going to be some themes here that are a bit rough. Your character, if you bring characters to the table that work in those themes, like just there are limits. The reality is like I don't want to role play, those specific instances. I think it would be one of those behind closed doors type deal, the fade to black deal that you have in a lot of games for, the more intimate things. I think having maybe alluding to a character participating in stuff like that, or making a character that would do terrible things to others to get what they want, or just for fun, isn't the problem. It's the fact that they want to role play it and make it a center theme with another player. Losing consent in the mix is the part that bothers me. Like,
yeah, losing their autonomy and control.
You could create, like, say you're playing a game where they're like, yeah, and you can also have like weird, you could be like, you don't have to be human, you could be like a vampire or a werewolf or like weird other things. Yeah, no offense, but like playing a vampire, you'd probably do some messed up things to people to manipulate them and take advantage of mortals to get them to do things for you or to exert your power over them. It's not an uncommon theme in a lot of evil characters and literature.
Bless you.
Sorry. But you shouldn't be role playing that, especially not when it's another player at your table. I think alluding to things like that can be a step if you're in a table where everybody agrees and everyone's on the same page
A
and like
lot of
there's
trust has been
yeah,
cultivated,
but like man, that's a tough, like that's like not really, because at the same time I get it, like running an evil game, like so I can't do any of these evil things. So are
I
we really
mean,
that evil? You know what I
like,
mean? Like it,
I mean,
there's
that's what I mean. Like, here's the thing, right? If I was in an evil campaign and you make like an orc barbarian, right? And they pillage, plunder, and grape. That is something that they do. And so it's like, okay, you have that aspect to your character because they are a tyrannical, evil, barbarian war chief or whatever or
yeah.
something like, and that's part of their culture in a lot of ways. Okay, you know what? Like, I can't be mad about that. But there's no real reason to really like act that out. You can just be like,
No.
hey, we raided a village and we did all the things that you do, and then
Like I'm gonna take my spoils and
yeah,
be in over here in
and then
this
you
dark
just
room.
and you just move past it and you'd be like, yeah, you do the things you do,
That's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And that's why it's like that's for stuff like this where you're literally trying to describe in explicit, excruciating detail the things that you're like. It's just like, why do that? Like, what are you? And you're apparently he's excited about that, and that says something about you as a person, where you're like, you're not cringing and like at this. You're excited and having a good time, and that's problematic. Again, that's one of the things I do love about this game as well, is that it has the capacity. It shows you some real shit from people sometimes, some stuff that maybe even that person themselves maybe didn't even really consciously realize was there, maybe.
Yeah,
But then
maybe.
when given the opportunity to like let loose or experience, like you see some real shit from people, and it can be pretty ugly sometimes, but alternatively too, it can be beautiful. It can be incredible when you see like, wow, I didn't even know you were capable of. That's amazing. Like that was super creative. That was beautiful. That was super like artistic. Whatever. It's like that's the double-edged sword you get with something like this, where you try to
Yeah.
make your fantasies come alive. But it is I do like kind of the discussion they have here as well. Continuing on from the comment, OP responds to that earlier comment with, I was definitely going to be the foreclose the bank kind of character, and I don't think anyone else saw what was coming, especially when Winter had his wife back. I have no idea why he chose me specifically to pick on, but I'm not sure why my post is getting downvoted either. Another commenter responds, I think you're getting downvoted because everyone involved in this sounds like someone most people wouldn't want to play with, you included. When the OP is also at fault in the story, they can also get a negative reaction. And OP responds, like, that's fair. I'm not going to lie and say I'm not innocent in this either. Or I'm not going to lie and say I'm innocent in this either. I felt like the title put me at fault enough, so I neglected to mention that in the post itself. Another commenter then says, like, I think I can explain the downvotes for you too. We're both men, by the way, and that definitely made it all the more weird. The casual homophobia of this aside kind of sucks, man. Winter's conduct was completely unacceptable, but has absolutely nothing to do with either player's gender. Also, I get why you thought throttling Winter's wife would be narratively satisfying, but it's pretty 0 to 60 in the violence against women department, which is probably squeaking some readers out. Unclear why Rand didn't choke out Winter himself, kind of just reads like a woman getting caught in the crossfire, which is exhausting to a lot of folks. And excusing your character from the campaign because you're dissatisfied with the current trajectory is one thing. Destroying the remaining party's big loot vessel on the way out is pretty much the nuclear option. Unsurprising that the campaign didn't survive this kind of derailment. Agree with the other commentator that as Session 0 was badly needed, a lot more communication between the players was also, I'd say, very much in order. Sounds like your ST wasn't doing much to facilitate that, and hope they learned from something from losing a campaign over it. Like, again, I kind of agree with it. Like,
Yeah.
you can say like, the casual homophobia aside sucks. It's like, I mean, I don't necessarily think that that's homophobia per se. Like I think he said that because he's just saying like for him and him being in that situation, it felt even more weird for him. Which
Yeah, I also it's fine. I find it weird that a character is doing that who has a wife.
I meant what I'm saying. Like nobody
not to say that you
understood.
can't. Not to say
No,
that
no,
you
no, no.
can't be
But
that
just
way.
even like wife, you apparently were lamenting your wife's death this whole time,
Yeah, why are you
and
focusing this on me?
yeah, and then she came back, and then you immediately start trying to screw with another person, like another player. Like you have your wife. Why like not to say again that this is okay, but why didn't you just do that with her? Like especially like what was the thought? Like like it shouldn't have happened at all. But it's just again the logic there clearly seems to dictate that the problem player, or so-called, clearly had a specific thing for OP, is as the vibe that I'm getting. Because he didn't do it to anybody else. He didn't do it to any other player character. He had his wife back at that. In fact, had his wife help out, I guess, which I think is another reason
Which, no
why.
offense, yeah, you have every right to kill her.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's like
sorry to
she.
say, yeah,
And to be fair, she may not have been in her
contributed.
right mind, of course, but
But she
quite
contributed.
frankly, she contributed, and quite frankly, I feel like it probably was a like a mercy kill. Honestly, the way he did it is kind of gruesome, but he's probably also not in
No
his
more
right
gruesome that
mind.
was done to that
No, and that's what I
person.
mean. Like I also agree. Oh well, I think obviously the reason why he didn't try to kill Winter was because he couldn't. Like Winter would just
Yeah.
be too powerful. He already tried to fight him, and that didn't work. So I mean, like I would say I don't think in this particular instance OP's decisions were wrong at all. Like, sure, maybe you didn't have to kill the wife the way you did. You could have maybe just tried to like quickly take her out, like, because she's
Well, if you're like
probably
chained up and the only option was I'm just loose enough to fucking wrap you, I don't know. I
maybe
don't
we
really
don't
see
yeah,
it.
we don't know all the things. I don't feel like it's
I don't
like
see a
a
lot of wrongdoing here.
no, I don't think it's homophobia. I don't think it's like a a violence against women thing. Like
Also, like, if you want to be equal, violence against anyone is the same.
No, I don't disagree so long as it's like, equal rights, equal fights in terms of like, hey,
My hands are ready to eat for everyone, and that's just how it's gonna be.
well but it's I think it's more so just like if you're going to fight somebody, regardless of gender, you should be ready to get hit back. If you're gonna hit someone, it doesn't matter what your gender is, you should be ready to get hit back. Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that a guy should hit a woman. I don't think that he should, unless his life is legitimately like in danger.
Yeah.
Like, but I
Or they hit you
also
first.
well, even then, like I said, that doesn't automatically mean a guy should hit back just because they hit him first. But at the same token, it's also not okay for a woman to be like, "Well, I can hit you because I'm a woman, and it's okay, and you can't hit me
Yeah.
back because I'm like that's
The
not
way I
okay."
see it, the wife helped in this whole situation,
Maybe
and
not of her own choice,
how much
but
of that was the DM, how much of that was the player, doesn't really matter. I don't look. I don't agree with necessarily nuking a campaign because you're not having fun because it's a fucked campaign.
eh,
Then
depends.
again, they can get
Depends.
fucked. They can
Yeah,
get fucked
I was gonna
because at
say,
least half of the table was okay with this,
or at the very
and
least, they just let it happen,
they
and
just
it's
let it
like
happen. And the DM didn't want to stop it. The other player
at
was a
least not
problem.
not normally.
So you
Like they
know what?
didn't.
Fucking,
Yeah,
I'm okay with nuking it,
honestly,
in my opinion.
yeah, I would say in this particular case, if basically everyone is like, because why wouldn't your
Well,
character do
everyone
that?
present, because half the people weren't there, but they nuked the campaign. I don't see an
Yeah.
issue with it.
So it's still like, again, it's like, if why wouldn't my character do this? If he doesn't like any of you, in fact, he probably hates all of you for allowing this to happen. Yeah, he'll go absolutely nuclear revenge here.
Yeah.
Like,
You want to play an evil
why not?
campaign? That's what you get.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it is. I don't know what else to tell you. Uh, any other thoughts you got on this one,
No,
bud?
I mean everybody's wrong here, but I think OP doesn't deserve the downvotes.
No, I don't think he does either. Because again, this was all forced onto him, and he just kind of reacted and responded,
Yeah, rolled.
quite frankly, appropriately, in my opinion. Like I don't think is really, yeah, he could have maybe handled it quote unquote better by just leaving.
Yeah,
He could have done that.
so could everyone else playing.
But that's what I mean. But everybody else also could have handled this way better too. And so I don't think he is in the wrong for how he handled it at this point. But you know what? I think we'll probably call it here for the day, y'all. I think that's all we got for you today. Uh, if you guys have stuck with us this long, we appreciate you guys so much. Again, like we told you, like a lot of these that we chose today are very they are stories and situations that elicit very interesting debate and ideas of how people interact with one another, and how, you know, not only you play these games, but again, just in general, people's interactions and their thought processes and their, you know, application of their feelings and their processing of their feelings. I am very legitimately interested and intrigued to know what everybody might think themselves of these stories here that you hear. Do you agree with some of our edicts when we pass? You know, who here are the assholes for real? Is everybody the asshole? Is no one the asshole? Is only one or two people the asshole? Like, let us know. We'd be very interested to know. But that being the case, again, please be sure to like and comment if you've come this far. Subscribe and share the channel as always, and we will be sure to catch you guys next time when we dive back down into the archive. Good night, y'all.
Yeah.